Good morning. It's a bit weird, isn't it, that every chair gets to actually introduce themselves. It makes the EB look like they're schizophrenic. However, the one thing that we're not schizophrenic about is that smallholders matter. They matter very much to us that we've got 2 sessions at this RT. They matter because they produce between 30 and 60% of our industry's crop, and in some countries as high as 80%. They're an integral part of our supply chain, and yet they face some rather unique and some complex challenges. I think to understand the future of oil palm, we need to understand these challenges. And in our pre-cluster session, we had 9 papers, and we looked at the circumstances of smallholders in Liberia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, and the Solomon Islands. We tried to dissect what these problems were. Some of these smallholders were in very mature oil palm countries, going into the 2nd generation of smallholders. Others were in well-supported countries. Some were in countries with no infrastructure, in post-conflict situations, and in sometimes post-traumatic climatic conditions, such as the tsunami and the cyclones. The challenges were listed as simple and complex. They should come as no surprises to every producer and smallholder in this room. Access and the cost of good seed. When you plant that seed, it's going to last for 25 years. If you are using poor quality seed bought from the back of some shack, then that quality of seed will be with you and your yields will be depressed. We talk about good agricultural practice, and really it's very simple. It's about inputs, it's about agronomic process, it's about collecting the crop cycles, loose fruit, and ripeness standards. And yet the knowledge base is often lacking, and the transmission of that knowledge base to the individual smallholders is not present, let alone issues which are peculiar to certification of RSPO, which is why we're here, such as how do you apply high conservation value assessments on something the size of a postage stamp. There is the cost of certification, and we think that's a fairly straightforward issue. It's not. Very often, most smallholders have inadequate capital, not to start off, but to continue the maintenance and upkeep of their actual blocks. As the hand demonstrates, these simple problems are fairly deceptive. And the complex ones are even worse. There is a lack of a premium and incentive for producers. How do we therefore translate that lack of premium and incentive back down the supply chain and provide it to a smallholder? We have the issue of independent and schemed, and quite a large raft of rules and regulations through the principles and criteria which need to be interpreted and placed in the context of smallholders. What role is there of cooperatives, and how can we best demonstrate organisation and governance? You see, it's not just agronomic constraints, it's also institutional constraints that affect smallholders. We think that all of us are good companies. Well, we're not. And our influence can be positive and it can also be negative. And in many cases, we can actually impede the development of our smallholders. We have also now, in many cases, the generational issue. Sons and daughters of smallholders no longer wish to be farmers. If we're going to build wealth, if we're going to push smallholders, as was said earlier in this conference, they are the future, then how are we going to deal with some of these social issues? Let alone the incredibly complex issue of how do we actually certify fresh fruit bunches. So what then are the solutions? I think we all know what the solutions are. It's just a matter of putting them into context, and I have really simplified them into two. Increase yields and form partnerships. Jonathan Porritt said it a lot more elegantly and eloquently, but essentially it's the same thing. And to do so, the oil palm producing companies in this room need to stop talking about the smallholders and start thinking about our smallholders. And many people see RSPO certification as the bridge. And that bridge can only be built by the companies. For those of you who walk around plantations, whether you be auditors, supply chain screeners, or interested individuals and NGOs, we look for objective evidence. Want to look at the objective evidence of how a company views its smallholders is look at the road. The better the road between the smallholder and the mill, the more care and concern that company has in forming true partnerships. The end game is transformation. We have to remember that our smallholders are older than RSPO. I know some of us have been here since Noah. If we want mutual wealth creation, then I think all of us have to move from a people, planet, profit triple bottom line to a people, planet, and prosperity. Thank you very much.